Welcome to Floyd Street's Finest. He is ESPN Louisville's Phil Baker. I am Jack Grossman. This is Floyd Street's Finest, powered by the Field of 68. You can find us on Twitter. He's at Phil __ Baker. Still working on it.
Elon Musk, baby, working on it. People straight from outer space, but not a new Twitter/X handle.
Yep. I am Jack Grossman 97. I'm also on Blue Sky at Jack Grossman. Like, subscribe, follow the pod on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, however you're consuming this. We really appreciated it all year long. Phil, it's been a really, really fun ride for Louisville, but a ride that came to an end in a very abrupt way in Lexington yesterday, to be completely honest.
Yeah, man. It's funny because I was getting. Let's go back because I
Yeah.
feel like I was getting the flutters and the butterflies in the stomach around there. I'm getting all the bombarded with text and videos from the hotel lobby. Got Diener and Blank there in the morning rummage. New producer Chase was sending me stuff nonstop. And the energy, man, like it was seeping through my
Yeah.
phone of the amount of Cardinal fans that were in the hotel lobby. I was curious with it being a Thursday 12:15 game, kind of embodying the, play hooky and go to these games, but a great turnout, a great contingency there. And then a massive thud
Yeah.
as the game started. Now, and I know you'll dive into this. There's a couple different buckets you could do. You can look at the season as a whole. You can talk about the seeding and matchups and just moving forward. But just all systems failure from the standpoint of Creighton doing a lot of things extremely well, taking away things away from Louisville that they've done well to lead up to that point. And then just, you got some solid numbers from Terrence Edwards and Chucky Hepburn, but everything just kind of felt stagnant and even off even when they were getting buckets. And that wasn't really the recipe for success that had led them to that record that they'd had when they were winning the games by throughout the majority of the ACC's conference schedule.
Yeah, even when the game was close early, you just kind of had that feeling of, okay, Creighton's getting what they want. And Louisville's really having to work for everything, especially that first half. I mean, Chucky Hepburn had 18 of their 34. The first half, it was really a bit of a one-man show there for Louisville on the offensive end. But the big thing was, even though Louisville had to work hard to get their points, they still, in a lower possession game, because it wasn't up and down, they still scored 75 points. They were up close to 1.1 points per possession. That should be good enough to compete in almost any game you play. The issue was, while again, I agree, they had to work a lot harder to get their points, and it wasn't the same type of flow that we've had. The offense was good enough to be more competitive in this game than what they showed, and that's because it was an absolute mess on the defensive side of the ball. And you do have to give a lot of credit to this to Greg McDermott, who is one of the best offensive minds in college basketball. You can't let that go unnoticed. That was one of the reasons why I was so excited for this game, was because McDermott and Pat Kelsey are two of the greatest tacticians on the offensive end in college basketball. But McDermott, I felt like Louisville, because Ryan Kalkbrenner is a phenomenal player, and we saw how much he impacts a game on both sides of the ball. But when Creighton was on the offensive end, I thought Louisville almost gave Kalkbrenner too much respect
Right.
from the standpoint of they were so concerned with him that they were leaving that they were leaving guys that were really, really good shooters all year long open. And that was a recipe for disaster, to be completely honest. I mean, you look at, to me, the biggest stretch of the game was Louisville had those two steals and buckets, got the crowd going, which the crowd, as you noted, was absolutely electric in Rupp as much as they could have been. They kept trying to will the team back into the game, is what it felt like. Every little opportunity when they would cut the lead to 14 or 15, it was okay. They're gonna get behind him, trying to get them going. But I think that was probably the loudest moment of the game when they had those two buckets, got within three. McDermott calls a timeout, which was a really good timeout there. And
Stopped all the momentum. I completely agree. I made the same note. It's just like there felt like there was a tidal wave coming, and then he's like, "Okay, we're good. We're calm down," and just kind of got back to their game plan. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. Yeah,
yep.
they definitely took the wind out of the sails.
And what happened on the next possession? Kalkbrenner had the ball about 17 feet out a couple feet inside the 3-point line. And Louisville, it's one thing to double Kalkbrenner when he's in on the low block, but Creighton's a team that wants to, value the analytics. They want to get to the rim, shoot a lot of threes, a lot like Louisville does. And UofL decides to double Kalkbrenner 17 feet from the basket. leaving Stephen Ashworth, who again is Creighton's best 3-point shooter and is a dude that, as we talked about on Monday, has stones. He's not going to be scared of shooting the ball. So to double off him with Ashworth on the short side made it a very easy 1-pass-3. Now, what does that do? It sucks all the energy out of the building. It calms Creighton down. And as you said, felt like a tidal wave coming where Louisville maybe, ties, takes the lead, and becomes a dogfight the rest of the game. That sparks a 12-0 Creighton run to push the lead to 15, and Louisville never got within 12 the rest of the game. That was to me the key moment late in the first half where Creighton built that buffer to where Louisville and Creighton were pretty even in the second half, but Louisville could just never break that barrier of a 12, 13, 14 point lead that Creighton built up during that run.
Yeah, no, and I made the note, and I sent you a photo of some of the fellows at the station watching the games with us in the conference room, and it's like, oh, you were right here with Stanford, and then you kind of boomed, and I understand that's wishful thinking, but I have so much respect for Greg McDermott in terms of just he's gonna muck it up. They don't foul, as we pointed out on the Monday podcast. Man, it just felt like he was just going to do enough to where it's like, okay, if you're going to make a little run, we'll match it. And
Yeah.
just that's the kind of the beauty of what his kind of system and he's built there at Creighton. And it's funny because, man, like it felt like there were moments where you and glimpses that you were like, okay, here could start a run, here could start a run. And I think that's what really led to the frustration with the Pat Kelsey technical, which you probably would have got around the 10-minute mark and probably not where you had it there. But it's just kind of like Bobby V says. I know sometimes we try to overthink it and try to sit here and say, this is what went wrong. But as Bobby V always says, sometimes it's the other guy's movie and you're just in it. And that kind
Yeah.
of felt like with the Creighton, it's as simple as that. And I felt like a lot of people, at least Louisville fans, I know this pod wasn't, but looking ahead to the Auburn game, and I'm just like, this game terrifies me for the opening game. And a lot of good feels, and I understand the abruptness and the sudden stoppage of the season in terms of just it's over, but I don't think that takes away from the regular seasons that was there. And I hope people can kind of put that into one silo. I know it stings now, but it was a fun season, especially considering what you've had to go through the last couple of years.
Right. That's how the NCAA tournament goes for better or for worse. I mean, you have all the excitement. It's the peak of it. But then if you lose that first game, it's just like, well, what happens now type of
These
deal.
first games, man. These first freaking games. Minnesota, Morehead State.
Yep.
Sure, I believe it's something else out off throughout the day, but it is just like, my God. Like, look, I thought what we got the producer Chase I was telling you about in the morning, and he was just like, I haven't watched anything else. I'm like, I'm not gonna go there yet, but this is a guy that he's kind of the same age as you, a little bit younger, and didn't get to experience the college experience at UofL of going to tournament games. So this is uncharted waters for guys in that kind of age that grew up like in high school, but like the college experience. So he doesn't know how to manage those expectations. And I think that's one of the things that was, if you want to be a glass half full for this, seeing the hotel lobby of all ages from like the fans kind of got a lot of shade thrown in the last couple of seasons. The fan base is okay. Is it going to be what it was? Not quite, what you had over the last decades of what our grandparents and parents went through in terms of following the teams. But I think it's in good, healthy condition now that you have some competency back at the head of the program.
Right. And that's what happens when, you have the scandals and then you follow that up with a 4-win season and an 8-win season. It's going to take time. As I know we've talked about before, it's not just as simple you flip the switch and you're going to get 22,000 every single game. But you had a full house at Rubberita yesterday, people going absolutely nuts. You had the crowds that built out throughout the year to where, yeah, it takes time, but this team, what they did throughout the regular season, had a lot of really major stepping stones in getting it back to where they want it to be.
No, I agree. And yes, I know. Look, if I'm going to be consistent, when you, myself, and Ennis did, like, who the hell's Pat Kelsey being hired
Right.
about, a year ago and said he looks like a guy that is just a ringer in a PRP Shively softball league that just hit dingers out the left field nonstop. I got to be consistent that our boy Ashworth looks like he plays in the Jewish Community Center CPA league with me and gives me 30 points every day. I mean, if we got to be consistent about that.
But like he's the type of guy that would play in that league. I mean,
dude, he
just
pulled
look
up
at
the March Madness logo, and I'm like, it's. And then I had the little Bobby V inside my head said, "It's the other guy's movie, and you're just in it." That's exactly what happened when he hit that shot.
Well, like I'm happy you brought that up because I even I took a video of it and put it out on Twitter of like this is you got to get out on him there. I mean I know it feels like he's shooting the ball from the moon, but he got a little, just rub screen on the corner, the far corner, the opposite corner that he shot it from. Terrence Edwards has a good 30 feet to catch back up to him, and he honestly kind of lollygagged out there. He shows late, but by the time Ashford had already hit like three threes earlier in the game at that point, so he's feeling comfortable. He's going to be confident anyways, but he's such a good shooter. He has such deep range. That's where you got to be locked in the scouting report, rush your butt back there and get up a challenge to that to where he can't shoot that in rhythm, because Edwards looked absolutely stunned. They hit the shot. And I'm sitting there like, that's what Steven Ashworth's done for multiple years, man. You can't be shocked by that. Like, that's the scouting report. That's what he can do. You can't give him space on the perimeter. And Louisville did that with him, Jeremiah Neal, and McAndrews too often in that game. And that to me was the biggest difference. Creighton was at 1.348 points per possession. For those who don't understand points per possession, I know I talk about it a decent amount on the podcast because I think it's a good barometer of a stat because it's easy to translate. Average is 1 point per possession. That's the goal you're shooting for offensively. That's the goal you're trying to hold teams under defensively. Louisville was at 1.098 points per possession. That's pretty damn good. That's going to win you most games. The issue is Creighton had a first half where they're at 1.4. They're getting close to a point and a half every trip down the floor. You cannot win a game when that happens. 1.348. Again, that's about a point and a third every time you bring the ball down. And you're down 15, and we saw this from Louisville where they were able to get things going. People other than Chucky Hepburn going in the second half. Hadley was efficient. Edwards not as efficient, but scored a lot of points. But when that happens, you dig yourself that hole against a team that you allow to get into that rhythm. It's curtains most of the time, and that's what it was. I mean, Jeremiah Neal was incredible in that second half for Creighton. Ashworth was phenomenal in the first half. McAndrews hitting threes. Kalkbrenner didn't shoot the ball a lot, but he didn't have to because he did a good job of just being a just kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Why am I blanking on this?
We're just kind of like floating, like I'm sorry. So just kind of a guy that's just like the shooting from the moon. Are you talking about Ashworth?
No. Kalkbrenner.
Oh.
This is terrible radio.
No, I'm sorry. I was my phone was blowing up. I thought something happened real quick. It was just our quality control chat. So I gotta.
You're good.
No,
you're good.
No,
but I wasn't doing that to try to call you out or anything. I quite. They were using Kalkbrenner at. Kalkbrenner wasn't this. Yes.
Decoy. Okay, there it
God,
is.
that was terrible.
No,
Jesus.
That's
the worst radio I've done in a minute. It really is.
Good news is we're on podcasts on here, so I'm not sure what your editing tools are there.
I don't edit. See, this is where me coming from the live radio side of things, I staunchly believe as you don't edit it out.
It's more natural.
Let it roll. Just let it roll. Just let it be natural. If I screw up, I screw up. It's whatever. I don't really care. So yes, they use Kalkbrenner more as a decoy. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I felt like I would. No, I apologize on me.
No. That's all on me, man.
Well, I was inside baseball, so this is what we're gonna do. So Strebel doesn't have shows today, so we're just kind of getting the logistics because we're carrying the NCAA tournament games on ESPN Louisville. But so. He still wanted we've done this play hooky with ESPN Louisville in the past. However, yesterday the majority of the staff was in Lexington, so we really didn't have many. But Strebel has his other job. It was like, hey, you want to meet up here and do it, record a pod. So we recorded the round table reacting to the Louisville Creighton game.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm
sure that Strebel had some.
Yeah, he did. However, regardless, again, I don't know. I'm going to say it's operator error. It only did like I'm doing exactly what you and I are doing right now and recording it. And it only did like 30 minutes of it out of like in the final 30 minutes. He's just getting in his element. Like he's really getting. And I'm so frustrated. So we just subbed it out with a Mark Pope press conference. So that's what we have there. That is ESPN Louisville in a nutshell. Since he had things to get out there.
I will say this is way off where we want to be. One of my biggest disappointments of the few years I worked at the ESPN Louisville full time was we did not do the play hooky stuff when I was there. We did shows those couple days because Louisville had hired Kenny Payne during one of the years. And then I forget what it was the other year, but both those years we did shows. And I was like, damn it. Part of the deal was I'm supposed to get these 2 days off. Why am I working? I don't want to be producing a show right now.
No, I'm with you. And it's, that's one of the perks out there. Now producers just do what they want and they just go. It's a brave new world. But no, that's it again, inside baseball. But no, I think you hit the nail on the head with just the scouting. I'll say this because I'm seeing this narrative beginning to seep out now. And I knew it would probably get there because look, I mean, the records, the tournament records, Pat Kelsey, that it's like it's a brave new world of going from college at Charleston or Winthrop to the Power Five level, and with the assets that you have at Louisville, and going having your first matchup with a coach like Greg McDermott at that. But the narrative is beginning to spread out there, and I'm curious your talks or your thoughts about this and just kind of some of the talking points. 0-5 now in NCAA tournament. I don't put a ton of stock into it just because this is his first one, especially after the regular season. But there is a contingency of folks that put some things out there with that. But when you look at just the overall body of work, I think you can say it was a successful season. The beginning of the season, I think you've been consistent about. I've been consistent about. It was, let's make the NCAA tournament. However, expectations begin to change a little bit because I don't think Chucky Hepburn's come around each, so
Right.
often. So my expectations began to teeter a little bit to a little bit more. But once I saw the matchups, it's like even in the back, in my deepest, darkest, most intimate moments, I'm like, damn, it's like, okay, they just made the tournament. That you don't want to get ahead of past Creighton, but the Auburn component is like, you didn't think you could get past them, but it's like the hope that kills you, right? Like that's where you think that some things can happen. March can happen. Auburn was struggling at the beginning of the game. McKenzie State was when Will Wade was taking down Clemson, even though they stormed back. So it's the hope that kills you there. But all in all, you're on the same page, I would imagine, with a successful season, just a disappointing end.
Yeah, first of all, I love the Ted Lasso reference there. It's the hope that kills you,
It is.
but yeah, that was my thing. Like, it was fun that Louisville was playing in Lexington, but it just they weren't done any favors to where I picked him to beat Creighton. Full disclosure, because I thought Louisville would be able to have more success on the defensive end than they did, but they got out schemed on that end, and I didn't think the game plan was great. Or either it wasn't great or it wasn't executed. I mean, Pat Kelsey had the quote coming out of the locker room where he said, the green dot guys are the ones getting the threes, meaning you don't want to give up threes to Ashworth, McNeil, or not McNeil, Ashworth, Neal, and McAndrews, and those are the guys giving up threes. So that leads me to believe, like, okay, they weren't trying to leave them open, obviously, but
Right.
there was just somewhere in the break between the game plan, the execution of it, and everything Creighton does offensively that's really hard to guard, to where they ended up really struggling on that end of the floor more than I thought they would. But even if they would have gotten past Creighton, Auburn, yes, they've lost 3 out of 4 going into it, but the thought in the back of my head, and what I really was hoping to do the spot on today was, okay, can you ride the energy and the emotion and a team that's struggling versus the fact that Auburn has all of that size, all that athleticism, to where I thought it was just an atrocious matchup for Louisville, to be
Oh,
completely honest. Yeah, I did not like. I had a friend tell me who I went to school with. He was like, "Why'd you pump up this Louisville team so much? I had them in the lead." I was like, at no point would I have told you to put them in the Elite Eight with the
right.
draw that they got, man. I
No,
was
no,
like, don't blame
exactly.
me on that one.
Yeah, no, I think it's more frustrating from the standpoint of you had a successful regular season, and I
Yeah.
know we talked about it a lot at the beginning of the week when we were talking about just kind of the ACC moving forward and just what they could do and not being pigeonholed into narratives. And I know there's some news coming out about the Big East ACC merger that is getting more momentum from Rick Pitino, Coach K's of the world, Danny Hurley talking about it.
Which I
So
think
they
that helps the ACC a lot more than it helps the Big East, to be
I
completely
agree.
honest.
I thought the exact same thing when I saw that circulating out there as well. But I think it's interesting to me just because this team on paper and what you were able to do in the portal and get the James Madison's best player and getting Wisconsin's best player in Chucky Hepburn and getting James Scott to come with him, who knew the system, but again had tum-tum problems yesterday apparently with the stomach flu that he said he was
Great
battling.
Smith coming over from Charleston as well. Yep.
Exactly. And then we haven't really dove into that, the, injury that he sustained. And I know he didn't get the start, but battling through that. And the thing that stinks about that is that you just hope that like he'd have that like big March moment where
Yeah.
it's like you've seen the SMU game where he was just lights out. And then the way he finished his season, sprained ankle against Cal, not being able to play after his family travels all this way from Australia. And I know Blanket Baker was in the locker room with them. And like some guys were emotional, but I felt like Rain Smith had a very just level-headed approach to like everything in post game. And it's like, damn, like the way he finished his season, he had the opportunity to pass Taekwon Dean his all-time three-point shoot if everything was kind of continuing the momentum to head that way. And for him to go out in that nature, it's unfortunate. Is he the main cog and the main piece like a Cooper Flag flag that I know we talked about last time and just the coverage of it? No, but he's a big piece of the puzzle in terms of
Yeah.
spacing the floor that can help out a lot. So when you're getting the numbers that you got from Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards, I think you know that you're going to get that. You just needed that other piece that kind of could take those things away. And like you pointed out, defensively, just wasn't the best game plan on that front. Or, I mean, like, I don't want to say it's the best game plan. Creighton just was able to maneuver around the pieces that you had on the floor
I
and
think
just
both can be true.
yeah, and played with their food.
Like the game plan either wasn't great or wasn't executed well, but at the same time, Creighton's so good on that end of the floor scheming things up that's just it's tough. I think both things can be true there. And to go back to your question about the tournament stuff, that doesn't bother me much at this stage because you look at it when you're at College of Charleston. What are you most of the time? You're an 11 seed or a 12 seed. You have to do or even a 13 or a 14. You have to do something pretty Herculean to win those games.
And look what he
More
did with
often than not.
Alabama
Yeah.
last year. I mean, he was it wasn't, necessarily like they were going to beat him, but it was closer than many thought.
Yeah, and you're just when you're in those small conferences, and this is something that is going to come into play with Kentucky fans and Mark Pope and Indiana with Darren DeVries as well. Is you see, I know Pope was a 6 seed last year and did get upset, but more often than not, when you're at the BYU's pre-Big 12 BYU or the Drakes or the College of Charlestons or the Winthrops, you're going to be put in tough spots in the
Right.
NCAA tournament to where and we've seen other guys go on the long run, they get the big job over it, but I would rather have the substance of proving you can make the NCAA tournament again and again and again, that a Kelsey, that a Pope, that a DeVries has, versus a dude that made one long run, but other than that, hasn't had any success of even getting to the NCAA tournament.
I need to send you this interview. So Josh Hurd was on with Diener and Blank yesterday, and it was really good about how, because he was pretty transparent, but it gave some insight a little bit to just kind of the decision-making process that he went into with like Pat Kelsey. And like he's done that in the past. I'll send it to you. I think you'd get a kick out of it, but you'll love this. So basically he's on the women's committee for the NCAA tournament. Josh Hurd is. So basically this time last year, driving up to Indianapolis and trying, I guess, talking with Pat Kelsey and his representatives going up there. And he's like, man, I wasn't really sure if Pat Kelsey was interested or if we were 100% interested. He gave some real insight that just kind of the plated process up the 90-mile trek up the I-65. But then when the committee stuff came out, or I'm sorry, going back to the ACC tournament with the Gabe winner over Stanford, he was like walking and pacing the streets of Indianapolis and went into a Chinese restaurant and watched the game by himself. You'll love this, though. But after
I'm disappointed he didn't go to Shapiro's.
I thought of you, too, on that. But you'll never guess who he runs into when he's pacing around for this.
Who?
Mick freaking Cronin. And he's, yeah. And I'm like, mix the pick. Like, that's all I could think about. So, but they said they talked for about 15 minutes and everything. And again, he's just like letting his hair down, talk about this. And I'm like, oh my God. He didn't let anything slip about the discussions that they had there. And it's like, you're fine if you would have lost to, Stanford or something like that, that wouldn't have hurt you or something like that. And basically kind of giving Josh Hurd a pep talk. But he said he voiced his displeasure of just to some of the women committee and the people in the NCAA committee. It's like, what else could we have done? And we talked about that at length last time. When we did the pod together, is just saying ACC is closer to the Mountain West than it is the Big Ten or SEC, and that's a problem moving forward. But I love the insight that Josh Hurd provided of Pat Kelsey wasn't necessarily he couldn't get a feel for if he was interested in the job, but I think he said now knowing him, he was so laser focused on because these things happen really fast. Like I don't think it's a shtick or a bit when he says like I am not pleasant to be around when I'm like on game day. I kind of go into these like weird places and dark places where I just get my mind mentally checked for that. And I think somebody who was well composed, especially when you saw how physical the Clemson game was, some things didn't go the way in the Duke game, for him to get as technical at that inopportune moment kind of gave you some insight of some built up frustration for that. But it was interesting to see.
And I understand that, but you
can't happen there. No,
it can't happen there. I mean, that's where that was the closest Louisville had been in the entire second half. They were within 12 points. They had the ball. Edwards shoots a three, which, by the way, I know Pat Kelsey had a rough angle on it, being behind it, but it didn't really look like it was a foul. Yeah.
The ball left his hand. His arm was touched after the ball left his hand.
Right.
I could see it going either way.
Right, exactly.
But
either way, you're down 12. You get a stop and a score. You're down 10, and yeah, it's still not the most ideal thing in the world, but you're down 10 with 4.5 minutes left, whatever it would have been. and you got a puncher's chance there. Like you can make something weird happen in one of those
Called a
spots.
week ago against Stanford again, and
Yeah,
Creighton is
I
a
mean,
different
much
beast.
better team than that,
Yeah, exactly.
and a lot less time than that too.
You've
But
seen
you,
glimpses.
yes.
You had something to build. I'm with you on
But
that.
if you
I didn't
cut,
think
but
it
if
was
you
going to
cut
happen.
that lead to 9 or 10, the crowd goes nuts. All the game pressure goes on Creighton. I mean, we saw this multiple times yesterday. In two teams that ended up winning the games, but with Drake when Missouri made that run, and with Michigan when UC San Diego made that run. You see the teams that are coming back after, the opposition has controlled the game most of the way. You put a run, a 10-0 kill shot or something into them, and they just turtle up there for a little bit. And whereas Michigan and Drake had the time left to kind of recompose themselves and do enough to be able to win the game, if you throw that on Creighton, maybe they don't have that time to really fully compose themselves to where you're able to go and you're able to steal the game. And again, I'm not predicting that's what would have happened, but you got to give yourself that chance. And when you get the tech, you're putting Ashworth, who's like 94% on the season for the free throw line at the charity stripe. He's hitting them both. Neal hit a tough jumper, and then you're sitting there, you're down 16 again. The game's over.
Yeah.
It's just it's curtains at that point. Pat Kelsey's done a phenomenal job all year long, but at that moment he let his emotions get the best of him, and it was kind of the final nail in the coffin for Louisville trying to make some type of miracle comeback bid.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's a terrible time for that. And just some of the matchups, and I know you're got the injury bug, and you're battling with James Scott, whatever illness he
Yeah,
had
but
going out there.
everyone has.
No, absolutely.
We talked about on Monday. I mean, if Creighton has Pop Isaacs, you think they're a 9 seed?
No,
No.
no, and they showed them both too, and all that. And now that's a different discussion. Like regardless of what you think about the ACC, the number two, the team that got to the Big East championship was a 9 seed in that. Then I know Greg McDermott. We played some of his sound on a plethora of shows, and he had his thoughts about that too. But man, yeah, it's. I think if you put it in, this isn't going to be the excuses pod for what transpired on that. I just think Greg McDermott is a really good coach, and he
Yeah.
has consistently won. That's why when some of his names were kind of being linked to some other big jobs out there, it's like, look, man, Tony Bennett, Billy Donovan, Jay Wright, they couldn't win the big ones until they could. And it just feels like when you kind of have a landscape changing of the sport consistently, I'm not saying Greg McDermott's going to win one there, but I think he's going to have a fighter's chance over the next few years or whatever decade he's there.
I do think it's going to be interesting because one, he's in his 60s already. I think that's the main reason why a school like Indiana, for instance, didn't look harder at
Right.
him. Ironically, they did
His
hire.
coaching tree is crazy too.
Yep,
I saw that come out with when DeVries came out. I was like,
yep.
my God, it's like not up there with the Pitino coaching tree, but damn, it ate the stump like cows.
We got to get to that too before the pod ends, and we will. But
Sneaky good coaching
yeah,
tree,
it is
right?
a sneaky good coaching tree, and DeVries is one of those guys. It does, and I think that's an impact on how good Greg McDermott's been that Indiana's hiring from that coaching tree. But I do wonder if this is kind of his peak moment and chance, which sucks for him that Pop Isaacs is hurt. But having Kalkbrenner, a dude that's such a unicorn, 4-time Big East Player of the Year, this is the only time he's really been able to put. These last 3 years have been that stretch where they've been able to put it together on both sides of the ball at the same time. So I am interested to see what life looks like with him post Kalkbrenner, because he had the peak with Doug, his son, obviously, but then they had a couple lean years there, but then they got Kalkbrenner in this current core, and they've obviously been fantastic. But what happens without Ryan Kalkbrenner, I think, is going to be the big question for Creighton moving forward. But you look at it and just the ACC as a whole. I mean, I know there's not a lot of teams, but just a rough day for the league. The thing that the ACC's hung its hat on the last couple years is miraculously overplaying the seeds. And that was always something to me that was like, okay, yeah, that's great, but there's no substance to overplaying in March. And I'm not going to crush the league and say, yes, I was right, because the two teams that went 18-2 both lost yesterday. But to me, it shows the narrative. It does crumble the narrative of, look at what Miami or NC State or North Carolina did in March. That means the entire league's great. No, those were aberrations over the rest of the league, just a team getting hot at the right time. We're seeing this now Yes, do I think Louisville's better than losing this game? Absolutely. They shouldn't have been an 8 seed. Clemson, no Dylan Hunter. I know that hurts, but they got whipped by McNeese State. So it works both
Ferocious
ways.
comeback
Yeah.
at the end, though. My God, I was just
Yeah.
I looked up, it was like 31-13 or like 40-18, and then it's like I was like not paying attention. Like, damn, I was like the ACC sucks, and then it's like 69
Yep.
67. I'm
It's
like,
like, where
holy
did
hell! I was
that
like, what
come from?
happened? Yeah,
But the league's been bad the last few years. It's not that it's some shocker that both Louisville and Clemson lost yesterday, and ironically, the ball's in the court of just Duke and Carolina again. Which, if Duke goes out and wins the tournament, though, which is a very, very real possibility, that doesn't mean that Louisville, Clemson, Carolina, and all these other teams are suddenly so much better. It's like we had the data throughout the year that the league wasn't very good. Louisville got severely punished for it. Clemson to a lesser degree, but still, you think of an ACC team that goes 18-2 in conference play and beats Duke and Kentucky at home throughout the year. You're thinking they're going to be better than a 5 seed.
and kudos to Will Wade. I mean, like
Yeah.
he's been blunt as can be about the entire process, and for him to like come out with these comments, it's like, look, a lot of these guys may be coming with me. It's just it's a new day in the college basketball landscape.
That's
like,
wild, man.
dude, it's crazy. Well, you know what? A part of me is like, it's wild, but it's like you're saying the quiet part out loud that everybody's thinking.
Yeah.
I appreciate you from like, look, I'm casted at this as this villain. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm just gonna speak my mind freely, and whatever happens, happens. By the way, real quick, this I always cite him. He's a good follow on Twitter if you like gambling and analytics. But this our buddy
Chris Hatfield.
Yeah, he put that out there. Get a bingo card out for this. But basically said the post mortem from yesterday isn't pretty. Shooting 40% from the field with 14 more shot attempts than your opponent and losing by double digits is not a common feat. It's only the fourth time it's happened to a higher seed since 2000.
Well, again, that's the defense, though. Like Louisville, again, it didn't look easy offensively, but they got the job done well enough on that end of the floor.
Right.
They were, it was such a mess. They got shredded on the defensive end, and they never gave themselves a chance, to be honest.
And there was a couple times where I thought Chucky Hepburn was going to have his infamous back tip or something like that. That's kudos to Ashworth for just like protecting the ball. He's an older guy. Obviously, he had the kid in the stands, which I thought was hilarious. I was like, man, whose kiddo's that? And then you read the bio, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. Well, yeah, but shooting from the March Madness logo, I just thought defensively too, like the things that have got you the record that you had, it just kind of crumbled yesterday, and it was in an inopportune time. And hopefully, you can catapult the success of the regular season. Build off this, and the transfer portal starts now. You'll love this, and I know you were gonna scream out loud, but I had somebody who listens to the stations as well as your pod come up to me and was just like, well, I hate the seeding, but like, do you think like if they lose it, they can get a jump start on the transfer portal? I'm like, get the hell away from me. I was like, get all the way a hell away from me. I was like, I'm not having that discussion. I know it's a new landscape, and your reaction is perfect for how that happened. I was like, I value your opinion on a lot of things. That may be one of the dumbest takes I've ever heard in my life.
First of all, appreciate you listening to the pod. Yes. I really do. And the station
it wasn't
as well.
It wasn't the Homeland Security guy. That's another one that you got. You're building up you're building up your feet right there.
Please do not stop listening to the pod because of this, but you'd rather be playing the Sweet 16. Come on, man. This is what we play for. This is what you do the other 11 months of the year, so you can have a game of the Sweet 16.
I understand you want the cool shiny new toy for Christmas for next year with
Mike. Yeah, guess what? There's anything you could have learned is with how late in the coaching search cycle that Kelsey and Pope were hired this year, and you still put together pretty damn good teams.
Right.
It can still be done. And guess what? That's the good problem to have. If you're a top of the line college basketball program, you're going to have to figure out how to navigate the portal while also preparing for Sweet 16, Elite Eights, and Final Fours. That's the name of the game right now. Jeez.
Yeah, I know.
No, you do not want to be at home to get a jump start on the freaking portal.
Well, no. and if there's anything we've seen, it's like whenever the transfer portal. I love the graphics that your team at the Field of 68 puts out there, as well as I know the odd threes. It's like the Doctor Strange portals from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's like portaling, and it always puts like the teams that have contacted them already. It's like they're already doing it. Like that, you think they're watching Maury Povich or Judge Judy like during their prep for that. Not only are they doing their deep,
you mean they're not watching Middle Tennessee State and Chattanooga in the NIT? That was triple overtime game the other night, actually.
I'm sure the basketball biddies out there probably were, but
It
no,
was
I would
it
have
was
been.
it was at the same time slot as the Carolina San Diego State game, which just absolutely sucked. And it was like someone said, "Oh yeah, there's this NIT game." So, you know what? Bleep it.
Yeah, just
Throw it
put it
on
on.
there.
Just
Yeah,
throw it on.
anything.
Something in the background. Inject this into my veins. But yeah, man, I think, look, I mean, Pat Kelsey in this coaching staff, if anything, and I think you saw it up the road in Indiana too. And I know we were kind of texting back and forth about that, but the landscape's changing of these proven winners, and you can't money whip guys. So you have to get guys that are constantly, trying and want to crawl here, which I know was what Josh Hurd said last year with Pat Kelsey. And look, no one this time a year ago, you remember the backlash that people had. They were putting out the photo of him in his camo pants when he was trying to get for the military appreciation and trying to get students to come to the College of Charleston game. This is that on steroids with a fan base at a Power 5 level that basically has wanting and has this pent up desire to be there. And I think regardless of the outcome yesterday, you saw the icing on the cake pregame with what it looked like. I mean, they were shell shocked, the players, like Javon Hadley at the podium and Terrence Edwards. Like, my God, I've never had a send off like that anywhere. Talking about that. So I think regardless of the narrative on some of the shows today, it's like, how will this team be remembered? I think it will. The further distant you get away from the game yesterday, I think it'll be remembered in a positive
Yeah,
way.
I think it'll be a lot like the bridge year in
Yeah.
2011, that where they lost to Morehead State, ironically, first game of the tournament. But yeah, it's a thud to end the season. But I think like that year, people will look back on it more of the fun of the regular season more so than the ending. We got to talk about it while we're here, Phil. I mean, we got Pitino and Cal again in the NCAA tournament on Saturday. What was the best game of yesterday? I would argue that Arkansas and Kansas game. Arkansas was able to make enough plays there at the end just to
Cal was doing
slide
everything
by.
in his power to try to say,
Yep.
"Hey, I don't know if I want to inbound the ball. Maybe let's Bill Selfie. You could take this game." But
Yep.
nonetheless, they were able to pull it out. I agree with you.
Oh God. Yep. But the bench, the Arkansas bench was just so perfect. I mean, Cal's going absolutely berserk. Bruiser Flint's sitting there chewing his gum, standing and pointing at everyone. Chin Coleman's there doing whatever the heck he does. And there's good old Kenny Payne just sitting there with his notes.
So
Just
I sent
chilling.
you and Strebel a message.
Yep.
We were talking about it, and it was just all I had from Kitty Payne was Cal was just going on an F-bomb tirade after the two missed free throws, saying they're effing free throws, and Kenny Payne did not move at all. It's like he's probably just been there, and he had his like little notes rolled up and whatnot, but they were able to escape what out there. Sneaky, not a great year for Bill Self, which again, I'm not in the conspiracy theorist.
First time he's lost the first round games in 2006.
Look, you know what? It makes me happy when I get on the internet. A lot of people tweet out or post things that I'm thinking that it's like, that could be a little controversial about like maybe Vegas got to him or there's point shaving. The passes at the end of the game from Kansas, I was like, what the hell are you all doing? Like, I was just like, my God, this is terrible. Again, I never would apply any of that 1-800-GAMBLE or if you have a problem, but it was just wild to me, just the end of that game and then just Cal and Arkansas not being able to inbound the ball and then has a little sprinkles in a little creativity at the end of the inbound pass to finally get it in.
Yes, they did. And now you set up Pitino Cal. Obviously, that was the narrative that drove the city of Louisville and the state of Kentucky for a decade. Were those two guys out at UofL and UK? It's the first time they're meeting up where one of the coaches is not the coach of Kentucky, which is kind of
That's wild.
wild. In one phrase, because both of them were at UK at one point. It's something that I feel like needs to be talked about. Is everyone talks about the 8-2 record and all that stuff. When Pitino and Cal square off, and Cal is at anywhere other than Kentucky, and that's when Pitino's at UK, both when Pitino's at UofL and Cal was at Memphis. Pitino actually has an 8-5 edge in the series, which is something that is kind of shocking the way things went when they were both at Louisville and UK. But just seeing this matchup again first brings out all the nostalgia for us. Pitino has the better team, but Cal, it's the classic. The parallels to 2014 are there in a lot of ways, where Pitino's team has had such a better season, but Cal's coming in as the underdog, as all the talent, and you never know. Like St. John should win the game. They should win the game. But
Yeah, I know. Like we've been saying that for the past decade. Like I'm with you. Like Louisville was the defending national champs, and they go to
yep.
Indianapolis and have again. I know it's a
But
different dynamic.
there's just that little
Voice inside the back
voice.
of your head.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like you got
like
the angel and devil on your shoulder, and one's telling you it's like analytics and stats are telling you to do this. However, we've seen this. How many times have we said this over and over again? It's like Pitino hate, and maybe the Kentucky dynamic will just kind of be a weight lifted off
I think
Pitino.
that's the point. I'm thinking is how much was it Calipari or how much was it Kentucky?
Well, and he's admittedly said it really bothered
Yeah.
him, the whole notion of just how he was booed when he was so revered there. So maybe he can just go into this. He's at a different, juncture of his career now.
This is the
And
ultimate test of is he relaxed? Is he actually
yeah,
as relaxed as what he said he is, and what he's proven to be for a couple of years now? But this is the one. This is the guy that tightened him up like no one else could. And can
yeah.
he still be that guy? Guy
Did you
against
hear his
Calipari in the
comments?
tournament about
Did you hear
Calhoun.
his well, about Calhoun, but then also I think last night after the presser they were talking about you versus Cal, that he's like, well, I don't have a it's like our team versus their team, because he's like, I don't shoot the basketball anymore.
We
I
don't
don't
play
guard
one
as
on one anymore.
exactly. So yeah, man, I'm with you on paper. I'm rolling with St. John's on this, but I have this little voice. It's like their roster is littered with talent. And Cal just has this unique ability where it's like they shouldn't have a shot at doing this, and then they just go in and boom, they're able to just like, why did I go against Calipari with that? But I'm glad you brought up outside of the Louisville Kentucky record there with Pitino having the upper advantage, because there was a narrative that was created here where even with Louisville fans frustrated about that game, and just the outcomes of that game, I feel like the majority, and I don't want to speak for you, the majority of Louisville fans still felt that Rick Pitino was a better coach than John
Oh,
Calipari.
absolutely.
Right. So that's something that is always kind of been in the back of my mind, regardless of what the record was with Louisville and Kentucky. However, Cal just had owned Pitino when he was here. So man, that's a fascinating game. 240, I believe. Is that on CBS or
Yep.
TNT? Okay, so
That
240.
was well when the bracket came out, and I saw that both Louisville and Rupp on Saturday, or Patino and Cal, or Patino and Self. I was like, okay, I guarantee you one of those two pods is gonna be the prime time standalone Saturday day slot there, and obviously Louisville didn't win, so that didn't give them the choice to make, but it ends up being that Providence pod.
Yeah. Bless you. Good job muting yourself on that.
I just barely got it in there.
You got it in there. You look good. Yeah, we need to isolate that and just get you doing just a massive sneeze.
That
But no,
won't be edited out either.
attaboy. No. Transparency here on the pod. No,
Yep.
I'm looking forward to it. It's look, an unfortunate end for the Louisville season, but I think with the offseason, we kind of have to recalibrate our minds too. It's almost like NBA free agency now, where you're probably going to see some names trickling out as it's each team begins to begin to kind of look in the offseason who makes sense, who's going to return. I'm fascinated to see who Louisville's able to retain. It looks like, I know Casey Pryor put out an Instagram post basically implying that he was a lot of people, again, if you want to get through the emojis and that in between the years of a 17 to 22
This is where you
year old.
live, Phil.
No, and not anymore. It hurts my brain, like, try to do this. All these people are saying other people could do it out there and translate it. I can't do it anymore. But Case and Pryor put out something. It's like basically a lot of people thinking that he's going to come back next year. I'm curious if they can keep this entire core intact. Everyone seems to really have a good vibe with the coaching staff, but I still have that voice inside the back of my head. We were talking about Petito Calwood. Petito did the interview with the Part of My Take guys, basically said the Euro Leagues got him prepared for what was coming with college basketball and just the 1 or 2 year contracts, and just kind of college basketball fans are just kind of dragging their feet to adapt to that. But I'm curious what the roster of who was on this team, who's going to transfer here in the coming weeks and months. What does that look like for Louisville and who they're able to bring in?
Yeah, and that's going to be the big question, and that'll be the big thing we pivot to on the podcast is player movement, retention, transfers, all that type of stuff. Quickly, I do have St. John's winning the game Saturday. I think they're able to get by them.
I
Yeah.
think, I mean, with everything that transpired with Arkansas, and look, it kind of made me sad, but again, it's like he's got billionaire friends. I shouldn't feel bad for him. But did you hear him say it's like, oh, and Cal's lost a bunch of weight because he has no friends in Arkansas and he doesn't go out to eat? I was just like, damn. Like, I mean, it's just
Well,
like I should feel.
like, let's be honest here. The food in Fayetteville probably isn't matching what you could get at Lexington.
Well, I mean, you
A
get
lot
you
of
got the
Tyson chicken in Walmart
yeah,
in Fayetteville.
Walmart
Yep.
freezer food. Actually, I've heard Fayetteville's like super trendy because of Walmart.
I can
Nonetheless,
see
like
that honestly.
same here too. But it's just like it made me sad. I was like, damn. I was like, you and Brad Calipari. It's like, do they got a Ruby's down in Fayetteville for Chin Coleman and KP to hit up? But no, it's why I'm with you. I'm rocking with St. John's and Pitino. However, there's just this little voice. It's like,
Yeah.
you've done this before with John Calipari. He just gets the most out of the talent that is on this team for games like this. So, yeah, I don't know why I'm doing it with the record with Louisville, Kentucky, but maybe being in a different shade of red for each coach and not being in blue will definitely make a little lax a little bit more for one RP.
That's what I'm banking on, I guess, when I make this pick. And also, I have St. John's in my Elite Eight. So, and I did in the bracket, I did pick this game to happen, mainly because I wanted it to happen, just for the storylines and all that. So, I know Pitino self would have been cool too, and the Zuby Ejiofor story would have been nice, but nothing tops Pitino Cal, man.
You need some
Nothing.
stars of the sport, man. Like, I mean, the theatrics that come with it. It's again, I've said this over and over again, and we've talked about it on the pods. I am amazed, and I say this every time, and I think it needs to be reiterated. I'm like, first take, whenever they're going on there, the way they just kind of they talk glowingly about Rick Pitino now is just it that needs to be a 30 for 30 in its own, not just
There just needs to be a Rick Pitino 30 for 30,
but
period.
just the 180
Like,
from the meeting. We've had some national folks on some of the shows, and like they're like, I mean, it's to be honest with you, you're not gonna like it. It's like it's because he's in New York, he's in the media capital of the world, that the fondness of Rick Pitino, the stigma's kind of been swiped away, and it's like, damn, like had you known that, a lot of Louisville fans happy with Pat Kelsey, but it's like, what could
they
have been
aren't
if you
happy
just
with
would.
the 2017 through 2024 to get to Pat Kelsey.
So freaking long. Oh my
I will say
god.
there's one last thing on the tournament thing, and then we'll get out of here. While there's no pressure on Pat Kelsey right now, the fact that Louisville hasn't won, well, not no pressure, that's not the right way of putting it. While I'm not faulting Pat Kelsey right now for the 0-5 record, Louisville hasn't won an NCAA tournament game since 2017. At some point, you're gonna have to break through there, and that's not near the top of my worries at this point. This is more of a kicking the can down the road type thing,
Agreed.
but it is something. Well, right now it isn't a worry. You're gonna have to break through at some point. That's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, man. And look, it wasn't a loud voice of it. And the majority, and again, it's small sample size, our text line, Twitter, whatever we see on there, the posts on some of our social things, the majority of it was like a cool moment, regardless of how jaded and media people are out there. They're like never delay gratitude. Like you could see the players getting emotional reading the notes that the majority of fans, I mean, got thousands of notes for that. So they're bought into the
Yep,
system. They
getting the
bought it.
standing ovation, leaving Rupp Arena.
Right. I mean,
After
Ethan
losing.
Moore
Yep.
this morning was telling me he thought it was Auburn fans cheering for them entering the court, and it was Louisville fans cheering them going off. And he said that was kind of a cool moment. But no, I'm with you. It's going to be used as a crutch for those that are kind of on the fence with him. And I don't think I think we were in agreement. That's not necessarily fair, but you're the Scott Drew, you're the Jay Wright, the Billy Donovans, and Tony Bennett until you're not. Like you can't win the big one until you can. Like there can only be one winner. And he's still young enough in his infancy of coaching at the Power Five level. I would say that, your hope is that Sweet 16, then it's the Elite Eight, Final Four. So your hope is over the course of the next decade, if Pat Kelsey is your guy, and I know Josh Hurd alluded to that a pay bump and a contract extension of some sort. He said that yesterday on Diener that he'll have that discussion there, and I know that he's gotten some incentives with some of the wins that he had, Coach of the Year, whatnot, going to the ACC championship game, but those are going to be talking points as we head into the offseason and just kind of knocking it down the park. And I know the On3 article came out that I think, and again, I'd never know what any of these numbers are real or not, but $8 to $10 million in free agency essentially for the 502 circle that they're playing with on that. So I would love to see an actual spots and dots of like who has what and not just these numbers that are being thrown around. But that was behind the On3 article paywall out there. Is that's kind of the treasure chest that they're playing with.
Yep, and it's going to be fun to see what happens the next couple of weeks, months, and years with that. We're talking about tournament basketball again. That's the big thing. That's all we got for today. We got to get out of here. Phil, always appreciate the time. Appreciate Coach Lieberman as well throughout the season. We'll still be doing stuff as the tournament goes on. React to that in the portal as well. But this is obviously kind of the natural end here a little bit with the season ending. Won't be doing 4 pods in a week again. I'll put it that way. But it's been a great stretch, a great run for Louisville. A really exciting first year under Pat Kelsey. And it's been really, really fun to be able to talk through it and be able to actually, again, talk about the games. That's what I love doing, and we've actually gotten back to that this year. So Phil, appreciate you today and hopping on throughout the season, man. Means a lot. Had a blast with you all year. Again, Coach Lieberman, Mark Ennis, everyone else that's hopped on. Really, really appreciate that. Appreciate all you guys listening. There is no podcast without you guys. So so really, really have had a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I have this past year. But until next time, I think Coach Lieberman and I are aiming sometime early next week to react to the first round. But for Phil Baker, I'm Jack Grossman. This has been Floyd Street's Finest, and we'll catch you next time.